Hello, how are you today? I'm going to practice reading from my book Harpers Faery, Outlaws, the introduction, preface, or as I like to call it, the preface, the face before the face, or the face that comes before the rest of the head, the body or the mind, the work. Other worlds exist, and we can access them from this world by reading or hearing words. We can also get to other worlds by seeing images. Words and images then exist in our minds. This is called imagination, but we could call it watching windows. And there's a song that I think of every time I read those two words together, watching windows. And there's a book that I published for a friend of mine about her poetry called The Woman Who Watches from Windows. And there's a painting that I saw in a Chinese restaurant the other day where the manager asked me, "What do you think that painting is about?" And it was a woman working on a painting on the wall while a man was painting the house outside, and they were staring at each other, but there was a wall between them as they were focused on painting the surface of it. And there was a window so that you could see both of them there. And so, again, I am fascinated by the concept of barriers and openings, windows, or perforations in walls. As an architect, we played with that idea when we were taught to work with abstract forms and voids, which I enjoyed a lot because it reminded me of my Montessori training from preschool and kindergarten. And because the basic building blocks are taught using that method, kind of like the Froebel blocks were for Frank Lloyd Wright. They give you an understanding of some of the abstract concepts, and you're encouraged to be an adult at a young age by exploring, concepts. You're allowed to explore using your imagination and question things, and that kind of dialogue between an adult and a child, I think, is why they're able to read at a much younger age and do mathematics, albeit with beads, at a much younger age than other children. Children can more easily crawl through these virtual windows to visit other worlds and then come back for dinner. See the book Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak, one of my favorite books. So I'm going to be digressing, as if you couldn't tell. I've only covered one paragraph now. We're in the second paragraph. As adults, we tend to shut off our power to travel to the other worlds, and can barely look at the windows for more than a few brief moments. This mental block is formed from social pressure because we think we have outgrown the windows. The scale of these portals in our minds is relative to our desire to visit them. This existential relativity is similar to what Aldous Huxley talked about in his 1954 book, Doors of Perception. When I say the titles of books, I often leave off the when I'm writing because it saves space. And it also comes from an odd habit I have of focusing on the first letter of the most important word of the title in order to find it in a library and catalog it. Anyway, this adult dysfunction syndrome is also related to the virtual language acquisition device, that linguists say most of us switch off after childhood. So when we lose our imagination, I'm calling this our adult dysfunction syndrome, or a dysfunction. It's an adult dysfunction syndrome, not the only one, but I think it is one that does affect adults as they take on more responsibilities with children and jobs and the stresses of adult life. You know, you're given life, and then what you make of it is largely up to you. Okay, we can call our ability to use these virtual portals our portal acquisition device, PAD, P-A-D. That's what I refer to them as. People that cannot control their PADs are diagnosed with mental disorders like schizophrenia or dementia. So, in other words, when they can't control their imagination or their hearing, they believe that aliens are talking to them. They don't think it's their imagination. They think, you know, and sometimes, you know, when trying to understand someone else, I won't assume that they're lying or that they're not understanding that it's in their head. I mean, you know, there is a possibility it could be aliens or something, right? I think we should always, you know, at least initially, leave some room for uncovering unsolved mysteries and or revisiting old cases that we thought were closed, but you know, with new evidence, we can actually re-examine things. However, yeah, that's just generally how I talk about it with mental illnesses that the person is almost unaware of, or at various times unaware of, because it seems so real to them. It doesn't seem like an artificial construct of their mind. They feel attacked by other people's minds and things like that. That there's not a lot of evidence for, but nevertheless, these uncontrolled episodes or phenomena happen. However, for those of us that can usually control our PADs, our portal acquisition devices into the imaginary world, the abstract world, the world of ideas, which Plato called, by the way, the real world. So, for those that think I'm trying to just put labels on people to, you know, say one thing or another, no, I think there is definitely a lot of arguments to be made on both sides of the reality imagination issues that come up in society. So for those of us that can control our PADs, we have the ability to confront or escape issues that we have in this world. So reading the book that you took to the beach. So you're like double escaping, right? You're going on vacation to the beach, and plus you can read a book that transports you into another world in your mind, and you can see the images and almost, you know, sense the descriptions, but you know that what you're reading is a book of fiction. Okay. We have the ability to confront issues through allegory or escape, as I just described, as well as learn about new ways of being, the ontological examination of being. The other worlds seem like a fictional overlay, which our minds are creating in addition to reality. The reality is that infinite worlds exist. Okay, so that's, for me, I think that's a reality, that infinite other worlds can exist. Now, do they exist? I'm not going to place a bet on it, but anyway, I can believe it, that it's possible, and that it could well be a reality. In addition to what we consider normal objective reality for our temporal bodies. Okay, in other words, I know I'm sitting here in a chair reading into a recording device. That is what I consider to be normal, objective reality for my temporal body. For this essay, we can define existence as living mental awareness, which means a reality or world is subjective to us existing in it with our minds. Due to the nature of mental awareness, whether conscious or unconscious. To be able to go through portals to other worlds in our minds, we can use any number of artificial meditation devices like books, films, drugs, dance, or music. Some of us live perpetually on this border, as I do. I can just go into the world of imagination very easily, and it overlaps my reality very easily. And yet I still can distinguish the two enough to do a lot of regular functional things in society and physical life. These mediums are suggestions the mediums, the artificial meditation devices, are suggestions which influence us, like medicine, or poison. It depends on how they affect us as to what we want to consider them. Just as society gives us suggestions about our collective objective reality. The number of people that give attention to things usually makes those things more important to us by the power of suggestion. In this book, Harpers Faery, Outlaws, I attempt to transcend the veil that covers our perception and show you another world which exists virtually parallel to our own. You can travel to this world with me through the magic spell of writing. These words will give you glimpses, at least, of the world of Harpers Faery. To actually travel there may take more powerful spells that use physical components. No sacrifice of any life is needed to go there, just an investment of time and attention. Enjoyment of the experience is why I share my writing about Harpers Faery. Harpers Faery, Ferry, the town that I grew up in West Virginia, of historical importance due to John Brown's raid in the Civil War, etc., compared to the fictional one that I am writing about, Harpers Faery, Faery, as in the Fae world, the fairy world of males and females with and without wings that are of various subspecies and nevertheless slightly mythological. The main similarities between the world in this fantasy novel, Harpers Faery, and the world in mundane, modern America, for lack of better terms, are close parallels regarding geography, terrain, characters, names, common language, common flora and fauna, historic timeline events, and general issues of civil rights and sociology. Racism, as we know it, is used among humans, but fairies are not even considered human by the majority of humans that are supremacists. Speciesism, I don't know how to say that, but there's a lot of vowels in there, and 3 S's and a C, is an ethical issue in both worlds. Other partial similarities include problems of politics. Governing, rule of law, and civil liberties are topics in both worlds that do not have clear answers. What do people do after a revolution? We have been struggling with the issues of democracy and representation since the American Revolution, and even the majority of the population rarely seem to be content ever. Perhaps the best forms of governing are by their nature ever-changing, and any specific permanence is as fleeting as our individual lives and willpower. Yeah, so the Constitution has been around for a while, but nevertheless there have been amendments to it, and things do change. There are changes made to laws, and ways of thinking do evolve in culture. The primary differences are reality perception based between Harpers Faery and Harpers Faery. Our normal popular collective consciousness, as we know it, exists separate from life in the world of Harpers Faery. They have their own sense of what is normal, and it involves different combinations of what we consider normal and strange, real and fictional. No list of the differences can be conclusive, but we can talk about some major factors. The main difference is that the novel is a medieval fantasy, with fictional characters that may be similar in some ways to real people in this world, but are only loosely based on those in our world. So let me try to read that a different way. The main difference between Harper's Faery compared to Harper's Faery is that the novel is medieval fantasy, with fictional characters that may be similar in some ways to real people in this world, but are only loosely based on those in our world. I think I can remove one of those references to our world to make that read simpler. In that world, I think I'm talking about the fictional world, they have their own lives and destinies, which can be very different than in this world. The power of magic and fairies is stronger in their world, of course. In this world, we are often lucky to witness such supernatural miracles. The historical time period of Harper's Faery Outlaws is set in their medieval period for that world. Therefore, to travel from this world into that setting is not only dimensional shifting from one universe to another, but also time travel. So get in your TARDIS. Oddly, the space travel is relative to your body's location in either. So if you begin in an American state far away from Harper's Faery, and you move through a portal physically, or let's say psychically, physically, not just psychically, then you travel in time, space, and dimension. If you have thought about these things, please leave your notes in the comments. There is no Christianity in the Harper's Faery world. There are religions and beings that are similar to ours, but their religious magic works more blatantly. Their cultures and religions are not meant to be identical to the ones we know, but many similar types exist. There are devils and demons who are at war with solars and divas. There is no literal Jesus or the Bible, but there are other related demigods and charlatans, as well as sacred relics and manuscripts that people will kill over. The human religions used to oppress the Fae in their world that are most similar to our Abrahamic monotheisms are Mistianity, Sunism, and Capism. In America, Our Harpers Faery is in the state of West Virginia. In this book, Harpers Faery is set in the larger region of Charles Land, which is near Maryland, Loveland, and Virgin Land. Charles Land is a combination of villages, towns, and lands around a city ruled by King Charles when the story opens. Maryland was founded by pioneers from the original Maryland located near Oz. Yes, O-Z. Loveland is ruled by Queen Ayla of the Hill People and bases their religion, economy, and entertainment on love. Virgin Land was created by a cult obsessed with repressing sexuality. And thus ends the preface, or the preface. The next part is Harper's Faery Mythos. Thanks for listening and allowing me to practice. And may the Fae be with you.